So let me just give you a couple of tweets. Russia has leveraged an economy half the size of Germany's to end the post-Cold War era and defeat NATO. It did so with aggression, natural gas, and nuclear. America must produce massively more nuclear, natural gas, and oil, or the liberal democratic Western civilization is dead. It's civilizational suicide. Everyone has been asleep. It is time to wake up. That tweet is from Michael Shellenberger, who is on the phone with us now. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Great to be with you, Glenn.
So, tonight with the State of the Union, they're going to go on and on. They can't pass the Build Back Better bill, so they're going to take all of the green energy stuff and rename it and try to pass it through. Can you please explain to the audience what you think these things are going to do?
Well, it's going to be a terrible effect on the economy, potentially on the environment. I mean, we're in the worst energy crisis in world history since 1973, and it's going to get worse, much worse. And I don't think people are aware of just how serious the political situation is. We could see the president restrict oil exports, which might be justified in the future because of rising oil prices, but then that would put much of the world and much of Europe, it would strengthen Putin's hand to basically sell oil to those countries that were quiet about his invasion of Ukraine. We basically have engaged in wishful thinking about trying to rely on weather-dependent renewables, solar panels and wind turbines specifically, when you need reliable sources of energy, and the two best that we have are nuclear energy and natural gas, and both of those technologies have been so restricted by progressives that it left Europe dependent on Russia, and that's why Russia felt so comfortable invading Ukraine.
One of your tweets, you said, imagine making our high-energy capitalist civilization work on energy sources that literally kept humans trapped in poverty for centuries. Renewables is the energy of serfs and slaves.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, we have a terrible understanding of history, particularly maybe more of us in America than in Europe, but even in Europe, we've just forgotten that we couldn't have had the Industrial Revolution, which lifted life expectancy from 30 years to 70 years. That could not have happened with renewables, with wood, with water wheels, with windmills. The same problem exists, an inherently physical problem. Renewable fuels, sunlight, wind, water, these are too energy dilute to provide the sufficient power that you need to power our machines, which make this incredible prosperity that we enjoy and take for granted possible. So we just have been in like a dream state, whereas Putin was in the real world of nuclear power, which generates significant quantities of heat. He was in the real world of natural gas, and he built nuclear plants at home so he could export gas to Europe, make Europe dependent on him. And as Europe left on the daydream around returning to some, ecotopia, some period that never existed, in truth, the period that the romance of renewables conjures was a period of poverty, misery, slavery, and serfdom. So I think this is a wake-up call. I think everything's going to change now.
Well,
we're going to be reminded why we need fossil fuels and nuclear.
Did you see that the leader of the Green Party in Germany yesterday, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that whole party started because of nuclear energy. They said that they will compromise on nuclear power plants to keep them running if it means that they can get off of the teat of Russia. That's remarkable.
It's amazing. I mean, basically, people who had previously been against nuclear are absolutely changing their minds. We'll see what happens in Germany. I mean, it tells you how much nuclear has become the secular devil for Germans and progressives and Greens in particular in Germany, that they were willing to massively increase their defense spending, which I think we should all be concerned about, actually, given the history of Germany. That they increased their defense spending before they would turn their nuclear plants on. But I do think things are changing very rapidly.
So who is leading this? Is it the United States that is leading this? Because, I mean, yesterday they asked Pete Buttigieg about, what are we doing about the cost of gasoline? And he's in a fantasy world. Listen to how he responded.
Drill more, open up more U.S. land to drilling. What's the administration's response to that idea?
Well, look, the president has laid out and taken a number of steps, including addressing the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, including diplomatic efforts to increase global oil production and other ideas that have been raised that are on the table because everything deserves to be considered. But let's also be clear that we are in the middle of a long-term transformation that is already fast underway, especially when it comes to vehicles. Making electric vehicles more affordable for Americans, something that the president has proposed and is hoping Congress...
Stop. I mean, this is the Great Reset nonsense. I mean, how are we going to power those electric vehicles, assuming everybody gets one real quick? What he said was really disturbing to me is, we can't forget, we're in the midst of a grand turnaround and going into a different direction. They're not stopping. They will not stop. No fact or crisis will get them to stop and go the other direction.
No, I mean, and look, it's this is the idea that we're going to switch to lithium and suddenly we're going to replace all of our petroleum with lithium, and then become dependent on Bolivian mining. There's an unreality here. People are living in a daydream. Putin lives in the real world. In the real world, you need significant amounts of power. The more of it that can come from your own country, the better. The more you can export, the better for your country. So if you care about America and you care about American interests, what you want to do is rely more on American power, not less. So look, the Tesla is a beautiful car. Electric cars are really interesting, but the long-term trajectory of this is that we're going to move from oil and natural gas to hydrogen and nuclear, and this has been understood for many decades. So the transportation secretary, who, by the way, understands absolutely nothing about energy and has no experience or record on energy, and yet energy is fundamental to transportation. Mm-hmm. He is bought into basically just a fad, and really that comes out of a religious, new secular religion that imagines we're going to harmonize ourselves with the natural world through renewables and electric cars.
So how long will it take us to, and when do we hit a point of no return where they've just crippled us on oil and gas and any kind of energy that would actually be reliable?
I mean, Glenn, as you know, we're missing leadership at every level of our society in many ways, and so we don't have the leadership that's explaining to the American people what's in our best interests, what's in the best interests of our allies in Europe, our best interests of Japan and South Korea, and our allies in the Pacific region. That is a nuclear future. It's an oil and gas future. The good news is we may not need to use as much coal in the future, and we certainly won't because we do have so much oil and gas. But progressives, I'm afraid to say, my former party, have repressed those energies in the name of relying on solar panels made by enslaved Muslims in China, and in Europe, relying on Putin for a significant portion of their gas, enough gas to make them unable to stand up to him and prevent him from invading Ukraine. So we've got to reorient towards American energy, American power. That American power is literal and figurative. If we have a lot of American power in the form of nuclear, natural gas, and petroleum, then we have significant American power globally for progressive Western civilization, not for the dictatorship that we see in China with creepy facial recognition and social media software designed to control its population, or with Putin. Putin is going to start bombing apartment buildings. Putin is going to kill a lot of people. We have this beautiful thing called civilization, Western liberal civilization. You can be Jewish, Christian, Muslim. You can not believe in God, and everybody has the same rights. You can disagree with the president. You can attack. You can criticize the president in our countries, in our liberal democracies. That's not what's going on in China and Russia. And I think that the invasion of Ukraine is a wake-up call that we have got to assert our power as people that believe in Western civilization, and that means that we need really powerful sources of energy, nuclear power, natural gas, oil. We can't be dependent on solar panels and weather-dependent wind turbines, which fail when we need them the most and are produced by people that are against our values.
Michael, when are people going to really feel? I mean, I can't believe people are as silent on gas prices as they are right now. And
it's absurd because we have so much petroleum.
I know.
We have this blessing in the form of shale, this incredible rock formation. We pull out of it light sweet crude. We have to we should have been working to transform our refineries much more quickly over the last several years than we did. We should be pumping much more petroleum into our allies, so they're not dependent on the Russians.
But with
they're dependent on the Russians for like 20% of their petroleum in Europe, and much more than that for coal and natural gas. Coal and natural gas is over 55% for Germany. You know, if we provide those fuels, then they're less dependent on really bad actors like Putin and Xi.
Well, we can't. Our banks won't finance any of those new refineries or any of the updates because of ESG scores.
It's insane, which is so corrupt that it suggests that a power source, namely solar panels, which require 300 to 400 times more land than natural gas or nuclear, are somehow better for the environment, even though you have to spread them all over deserts, kill endangered species. And they think that they manipulate the numbers to show that solar was better than even nuclear, which produces the least amount of waste, uses the smallest amount of inputs, and then they've killed off the natural gas and oil industry when we should be exporting it abroad. And gasoline in California now costs over $5 a gallon. It should cost half that. You know, we should have we have a world-class industry, and we have throttled it. We have squished it. We have squashed it in the name of importing crappy solar panels from China made by enslaved Muslims. And now you see the consequences. This is real-world stuff. People are being killed in Ukraine because Europe got over-dependent on Russian gas and coal exports and oil exports.
Michael Shellenberger, thank you so much for everything you do. He's the author of Apocalypse Never, also San Francisco, and the founder and president of Environmental Progress. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
You bet.